Welcome to day 2 of Beginning Excel. Some of the topics we're going to cover today are absolute cell references, moving and naming worksheets, working in filters, sorting data, and more as time allows. We're going to begin with understanding relative and absolute cell references. A relative cell reference is the most widely used type of cell reference in formulas. Relative cell references are basic cell references that adjust and change when copied or when using autofill. For example, in the spreadsheet that we have here, if we look at the total, this is using a relative cell reference. It says the formula is totaling B4 to D4. If we were to copy that formula down, as we did here, it automatically changes to B5 to D5. So it changes in relation to where the cells are with the formula. An absolute cell reference is used when the cell must remain the same when copied or when using autofill. Dollar signs are used to hold a column and a row reference constant. So what that means is if you always want to refer to a particular cell in a formula, you would use an absolute reference so that no matter where you copy that formula to, it would always use that particular cell in that formula. There's one more, and that's a mixed reference, and that's the alternative to changing a cell reference relative to its new location and referring to a specific cell location as an absolute reference. For example, if you leave the dollar off from the column letter but have it before the row number, Excel will change the column relative to its new location but keep the row from changing. If you leave the dollar before the column letter yet remove it from before the row number, Excel will change the row to its new location but leave the column the same. You can use the F4 key to create a mixed reference. Pushing F4 in a formula will cycle through the available absolute and mixed references as you go. So let's create an absolute cell reference and then copy the formula down and see what happens when we do. So we're going to click in cell H2. And we're going to type in change, press our tab key, and type in 1.1, then hit enter. And in H3, we're going to type in what if with a question mark. So we're going to do a what if. What if it increased by 1.1? What would we get? So we're going to make the I2 an absolute reference cell. But first, we're going to see what it's like if we use it as a relative cell reference, just so you can see what the difference is. So in H4, we're going to use our AutoSum button, or you can type in, and we're going to create the formula E4 times I2. So we can either come up to the E, or we can type in equals E4 times I2. So we click here, and then type in, click on E4 times, which was your asterisk, I2, and hit enter. And we get the total of 42.9. So right now that is a relative cell reference. If we were to copy this down, we would get zeros. And the reason we get zeros is because it's looking for relative cells. So as we go down, it's thinking automatically, okay, we're going to multiply by the next cell, which would be I3. And then the next one, which would be I4, I5, I6. And there's nothing in those, so it's going to come back as 0. So we need to make I2 an absolute cell reference. So in order to do this, we're going to click in H4 and we're going to put the cell in edit mode. And on a PC, you can either hit your F2 key and then your F4 key, or click on the I2 in the formula bar and put $1 before the I and before the 2, or double click on your cell and put $1 before the I and then 1 before the 2. Or on a Mac, you can get up in the formula bar and click and then do your command key plus the T key, and that's going to make it an absolute reference. And then we'll hit enter. So now if we look at a formula, it says E4 times $I, $2, which means it's making I2 an absolute reference. So when the formula is copied down, it's always going to multiply times whatever is in I2. So now if we copy it down, we're going to get our answers. So go ahead and save your worksheet. Always remember to save in case something happens and your computer crashes. If you have named ranges that you're using in a formula, you can also make them an absolute cell reference by using the dollar symbol with name range. Okay, so naming and moving a sheet. There's a couple of ways of naming a sheet tab. One way is by double-clicking on the sheet tab and typing a new name. The other one is clicking on the sheet tab, then right-click on it and choose rename and type in a new name. So if we come down to the sheet tab and we click on sheet tab 1 and double-click on it, you'll notice in a Mac it gets highlighted with a blue highlight. In a PC this would be a black highlight. Because the text is already highlighted, we don't have to hit delete or anything, we can just start typing. So we're going to type and call this tab fall. Right? Click on sheet 2 and we're going to right click on sheet 2 and right click on a Mac as control click. And we're going to choose rename. And again, it's highlighted in blue or black if you're on the PC. And you can just start typing, and this one's going to be spring. And then just hit enter. So now we have named our tabs fall and spring. Go ahead and save your changes. Remember to always save your changes. Now if you want to move a worksheet, there's a couple of ways you can do that depending on if you're in Word or Excel and depending on if you're in a PC or Mac and what version you have of the program. If you remember from day one, when we looked at the PC version of Microsoft Office 2010, it does not have the edit field anymore. Instead, it has ribbons. However, on the Mac, we still do have edit. So you could come up here and say edit, move, or copy sheet. And you can tell it where you want the sheet to go. So currently, we have spring is active and we have fall. So right now, fall is before spring. If we wanted to, we could move it to the end and then say OK. So another way of moving a worksheet is by just clicking on the sheet you want to move, holding down with your left mouse and just dragging it. You see your mouse now has a piece of paper attached to it and you have an arrow up here showing you where it's going to drop. And then you would just let it go where you want it. And the third way of doing it is right-clicking or control-clicking on a Mac and choosing Move or Copy, which brings you up the same informational box that the Edit, Move or Copy did. So click on the Fall tab and holding down with your left mouse, drag it to After Spring. So we're going to drag it to After Spring and we're going to let go. So now we moved it that easily by just doing that. Now for Spring, go ahead and click on your Edit, Move or Copy, and move Spring to the end and say OK. So now we're back to where we were before. Now right click on Fall, control click on a Mac, do Move or Copy, and move it to the end. So again, you're moving it back and forth. Now if you noticed when we had that dialog open, if we look at it again, you see it has to book here. You can move selected sheets to another book altogether. So if you have another workbook already open and you want to move a sheet from this workbook into that workbook, you would just come to this drop down, choose the new workbook that you want this sheet to be moved to, and then click on it and say OK. You can also create a copy of it doing the same thing. If I wanted to create a copy of the Spring tab, even within this workbook right here, I would just say create a copy and then tell it where I want it and say OK, and it would create a copy. Or I could create a copy of the worksheet in a new book or another one that I have open and still keep the original here. They're not tied, so if you update one, it won't update the other. All right, go ahead and move fall one way or the other back to before spring and save your workbook. And one of the things I really like to do in Excel is use the filter function. It lets you narrow down your information by filtering on information in columns, many columns at one time. So if we click on our fall tab and make sure it's open, so we should say Fall 2006 Software Events Forecast, and we're going to click on cell B3 because to filter you want to be in your column headers. And then we're going to click on the funnel button. Now this can also be found if you don't have this ribbon or up on your quick access toolbar in Excel for 2010. It's found on your data ribbon in both the Office 2010 and Office 2011 versions. And it looks like a funnel. So you would click on that and it's going to create drop-down boxes next to each column header. So let's say we want to see just the information for Boston. What we can do is click on the drop-down here, uncheck Select All, and just check Boston, and now we're only seeing the information for Boston. To get it back, you can just come up to the funnel, say Select All, and you'll get all information back. If you want to turn the filters off, you just click on the funnel again. That'll also bring all information back. Now let's say we want to see just the September cities that had 10 events. So if we click on the drop-down arrow next to September, and we want to do just the ones that have 10, we can do Select All, and then just select the 10. Or we can come in here, and we can just type in 10, and it's going to show us the 10. Okay. You can also do multiple filters. So now that we've found everyone that has 10, maybe in August we want to see, okay, they had 10 in September, but now show me the ones that had 10 in September and 15 in August. So we can come down in here, narrow the information down. So the only city that had 10 in September and 15 in August was Boston. Go ahead and get all your information back by turning the filters off. Now we can create custom auto filters to compare information in a column. So if we click on the October drop-down arrow, and it's going to look a little different on the PC side. When you open it up on the PC, you're going to see a screen that says sort smallest to largest, sort largest to smallest, sort by color, and then number filters. And number filters is what you want to choose for the custom ones. On the Mac side, you're going to go to the Choose One, and it's going to bring up the different operations that you can do. So what we want to look for now is October cities having 12 events or more than 15. So for PC, you would choose number filters, and then one of the options below that, which would look like this, equals, does not equal, etc. And then in the first field, you'd put equals from the drop-down. Then in the value field, you're going to put in 12. And in the second field, you're going to choose greater than from the drop-down. And in the value field, put in 15. So once I get into the Mac piece of that, it's going to look similar to the PC, but until then it will look a little different. So for on a Mac, you're going to choose one, and then we can just click on equals. And then in here we can say 12. Now it's going to come up and say and or. We're going to choose or. And then we're going to choose greater than. And we're going to type in 15. And then we'll just hit enter. And then we can just close this out. So we're going to have 3 rows of information. Because if you remember, we were looking for anything that equals 12. So this equals 12. And then anything greater than 15. So 18 and 23 is greater than 15. So to show you quickly what it would look on the PC side, if I were to come in and create a filter, let me go to my events forecast on the PC side. And I were to click here, and this is an older filter, so it won't have the same information, and I'll just change this one to 23. If I come in and I go to my data and I find my funnel, and then I come over to October and I choose number filters and choose equals, I can then say 12, and then I choose or is greater than 15 and say OK. And now I get the same 3 rows of information. So that's the difference in the look on a PC and a Mac for this. All right, so we'll close this. Now go ahead and remove the auto filter function just by clicking on the funnel, and it'll automatically bring all your information back, so it's not missing. It's really nice having lots of information that you need to narrow down. I can show you, this is a small spreadsheet, so there's really not a lot of digging that can be done, but I do have one spreadsheet that I can show you that has a lot of data, and I have filters on these. So on these, I currently have a filter for anything with grade 2 in it. And then if I wanted to narrow down, so all of these grades responses were people who had students in grade 2, 3, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, all the way up kindergarten. If I wanted to narrow that information down on even more, say I wanted to, how often does your student use their laptop for academic work at home? And it's how many days. So I want to look at, in all of those that had a student in grade 2, how many used their laptop at least 4 days. All right, so I'm narrowing it down, and it tells me my results are 11 out of 248 records. I can narrow it down even more. This question, how do they use it for non-academic work? So 11 used it for academic work. Out of those 11 that used it for academic work, how many used it for non-academic work also for at least 4 days? So I can come over and choose the 4 and narrow it down even more. Okay. And then if I wanted to, I could narrow it down by time, give me all those responses for April 3rd. So one person responded on April 3rd that had a student in grade 2 that had 4 days of academic and non-academic work. So just an example of how you can use it in a large spreadsheet to narrow the data down. Okay. So you can also sort your information. So let's save our worksheet by using the data sort option. So the data sort is your AZ or the ZA, depending on which button is showing, on your data ribbon in both 2010 and 2011. So if we highlight cells A3 to F8, so I want all of these cells right here, and I click on the data sort option, and I want to do a custom sort. I always want to make sure if I have header rows that that box is checked that says my list has headers. Otherwise it's going to sort the headers right into your information. Then we can click on it and sort by what we want to have the values sorted on. So if I click on, let me bring this down so you can see it a little better. So I always want this box right here to be checked. So now if I have a header row and that's checked, I'm ready to start sorting. So I can just click on sort by, and in the column, we're going to sort it on August, and then we're going to sort it largest to smallest. So I want my August totals largest to smallest. So right now they're 15, 10, 14, 12, 10. So I want it 15 at the top, then 14, 12, and then 10. I also want it to do a secondary sort. So I'm going to click on the add, which is the plus sign, and then I'm going to choose sort it by the total, and I want the total smallest to largest. So when I look at this, I want the totals sorted smallest to largest after my August totals is sorted largest to smallest. And then I'll say OK. So it did what I asked, 15, 14, 12, 10. So it sorted the totals, 48, 36, 17, based on this first. And then you notice in the tens, I have two tens, so it sorted them smallest to largest, 44 to 49 in the totals. Now on your PC side in 2010, when you sort, if I highlight the same information, and I come over here and I click on sort, you get add level instead. So we're going to sort by August, largest to smallest. We're going to add a level, and then we're going to do total, and then we're going to do smallest to largest and say OK. So it did the same thing and sorted it for me. All right, now go ahead and click on undo, which is the yellow arrow on your toolbar, and get it back to the way we had it before. And save your workbook. Okay, now we're going to do a little practice with text to columns. So text to columns will take a cell that contains information that you need to divide and put in different cells. Such as if you have a cell that has, say for example, your name in it, so it could be John H. Smith, and you want John H. Smith split out into 3 different cells rather than the one cell, you would use text to columns. So if I come over, and we're going to create a sheet 3 by clicking on the plus button on a Mac or the little piece of paper with a gold star on it on the PC version. And in A1, we're going to type our first, middle, and last name, and you can just use your middle initial, and then hit enter. So I have my name in there. Now from the data ribbon, we're going to choose text to columns. First, we're going to click on cell A1 because that's the cell that we want to split. Then we're going to choose text to columns. And even though there are spaces between here, I by habit just check delimited because it gives you other options too, and I want you to see those options. So if I choose delimited and I hit next, I can convert text that has any of these dividers between it. So a tab, a semicolon, a comma, a space, or an other. So an other could be like a backslash, a dollar sign, anything like that. You would just type in what the other is that you want to split it by. So we want to do a space. So we're going to click on space, and now it's showing me where it's going to divide the cell up. So it's dividing it between my first and middle and last. And that is what I want. So I'll just go ahead and click on finish. So now it has split my name out. So if we were to go over to the PC side, it's going to look the same if we go to sheet 3. And this is an old worksheet, so I'm just going to add the information here. I'm going to click in here. I'm going to choose text to columns. So if I were to use fixed width, it's going to automatically do it where there are spaces in here. And then I would just hit finish, and it would come out. Just by habit, I use the delimited, just because usually the data I'm pulling out and separating has commas or other symbols in it that I need to separate it by. Okay. So go ahead and remove this information. and save your workbook. And we'll leave sheet 3 because we're going to use it. All right, we're going to format values now. So we're going to create a new worksheet for this exercise, and where we already have sheet 3 here, or it's now on mine at sheet 1 where I've named the other ones, we're going to go ahead and use this sheet. So we're going to do an event expenses worksheet. So we're going to enter the following information. In A1, we're going to type in event expenses. We're going to go down to A2, tab over to B2, type in Boston, Miami, all the way over. Just keep tabbing over after each one. New York, Seattle, Houston will be in F2, and in G2 will be the word total. We're going to go down to A3, type in advertising. A4 will be lodging. A5 travel. A6 meals. And A7 event supplies. Now we're going to start putting in totals. All the way across Boston through Houston, the advertising total is $2,000. So you can just copy, type it in once, highlight the other cells you want it in, and paste the amount in there. Save yourself some typing. Lodging is going to be respectively across the cities 300, 450, 500, 475, and 300. Travel across the cities respectively will be 475, 625, 750, 725, and 560. Meals, everybody's going to get $100 a day for meals. So we're going to go respectively across. And again, copy the 100, paste it in. And then event supplies, it's going to be $2,500 for every city. So again, type in the first one, copy the next one. Now we're going to do our totals for each line item. So you can do that with your function button, your auto sum button. It's going to automatically say we're going to total them together. It's great, it's just what we want to do. And then copy that formula down. Now we're going to put a total mark in A9. And we're going to total these down. And we're going to copy that formula over. Whoops. Okay. And save your workbook. All right. Now we're going to start doing some formatting. So we're going to highlight cells B3 to G9. And then we're going to right-click, control-click on a Mac, choose Format Cells. We're going to look at for currency, and we're going to remove the decimal places. So you can either come in here and type in 0, or click on the down arrow until 0 appears. And then say, OK. All right, so here's our currency. If you want your dollar signs and your numbers to line up like they would if you were doing accounting, dollar signs to the left, numbers all right aligned, then if you highlight B3 to G9, you can either right-click and go Format Cells and then choose Accounting, or from here you have the Accounting button on your home ribbon, looks like some money. Choose the drop-down, choose More Accounting Formats because we don't want decimals. Deselect the 2. Again, you can either type it in or use the drop-down arrow. And then choose OK. And you notice it puts it in the accounting format, dollars to the left, numbers all to the right. So go ahead and save your workbook. And then we're going to create a new column. And in H2, we're going to type in Houston % of total. What we want to find out is what percentage is Houston for advertising, lodging, travel, meals, event supplies, etc. out of the total of all cities together. So if you remember from your school days, to find the percent, you do the formula part divided by total. So in H3, we're going to use our AutoSum button, and we're going to do part, which is Houston, F3, divided by the total, which is in G3, to get our percent. Now we're going to copy that formula down for the other areas. And to get these to look like a percent, you can again use your right-click Format Cells, or you can just come up to your home ribbon and click on the percent button, and it'll turn that into a percentage for us. So save our workbook. And let's go ahead and adjust our column widths. And from our last class, we learned that we did that by hovering over, holding down our left mouse, highlighting all the ones that are involved, getting up in between the last two and double clicking, and it'll auto format the column width for us. And save again. So now we're going to change our fonts. So if we go to cell A1 where our event expenses is, and we right click on it, control click format, and we choose Format Cells, we're going to format our font. So we're going to click on font, and if you notice on the home ribbon, that's the square right up here. We can also do it through here. I just want to show you both ways. So you can do it through here, or you can do it by right clicking and choosing font. Now you can scroll through all the different fonts that are available, but what we want for here is Comic Sans. So we can double click here until it turns blue, and then we can just start typing Comic and it'll show up, and we click on it. And then we want to make it bold italic in a 16 font. And we want to change the color to a blue, and I don't care which color blue you pick, we just want a blue. And then we're going to say OK. So now we have a blue 16 bold italic font. Now I want to center that across the top of all of my columns. So one way I can do that is if I highlight A1 to H1, and I control click or right click, Format Cells, and I go to Alignment. Under Horizontal, I can choose Center Across Selection, and I can say OK. And that's going to put it across the center of all my columns. No matter what size these columns change, it's always going to put it over the center of it. So if I want to get it back to where it was. Okay. So it's a different way of doing it than merging all the cells and putting them over them. Save your workbook. And now we're going to highlight our column headers. And then we're going to put some colors and borders and patterns on. So first let's do our colors, borders, and a pattern. So highlight A1 to H1, and we can right click on it and choose Format Cells and Fill. We can also get this background color from the little paint bucket right here on our home ribbon. That looks like it's spilt over, and we can choose our background color from there. So we're going to choose an orange color. And then under Pattern Style, we're going to choose the last one, last row, last column, thin diagonal crosshatch. And then we're going to put a border on it. So our borders are located here, or they're this square right here between the U for underline and the paint bucket. And I just want a bottom border, so I'm going to choose the bottom line and the thicker line style and click on OK. It's a little hard to see, but there is a bottom border under there. Crosshatch makes it look kind of nasty with the blue there, but I just want to show you what you can do. And now we're going to highlight our column headers, and we're going to change them to a blue color. So to do that, you can either highlight them and then right click and choose font and the color, or on your home ribbon you can choose the A, the drop down, and the color. So I'm going to choose another blue for this one. and then I can click off it and I can see what I have. And save our worksheet. You can use conditional formatting in spreadsheets so that you can tell it if a certain criteria meets your rules, then a specific formatting will be applied to them. So conditional formatting automatically applies format attributes based on cell values. If the data in a worksheet meets the criteria you enter, then Excel will apply the formats you specified it to. So for example, if we want totals above a certain number to be red, totals below a certain number to be blue, or totals that equal a certain number to be green, we can do coloring conditional formatting, which is what we're going to do now. So if we click on cell G3, that has our total in it for advertising of all cities. And then we go to our home ribbon and we look for conditional formatting. And we click on that, and we're going to see highlight cell rules, and we want to choose greater than. And this looks the same in PC and Mac version. Now we want to look for anything greater than 10,000. So any total that's greater than 10,000. And I want to format that with red text. And I'm going to say OK. Now I'm going to repeat this and go back to conditional formatting, highlight cell rules. I'm going to choose less than, because now I want to have anything less than 5,000 be green text. And so it's not listed here. I'm going to have to click on Custom Format. I'm going to turn off the background colors. I don't want a background color, so I'm going to say no color. And then I'm going to go to Font, and I'm going to choose a green. And I'm going to say OK. And then OK. So you notice our 10 didn't change because our 10 was outside of both the rules. We said anything greater than 10 or anything less than 5,000. So it's not going to impact the 10. However, this cell holds our conditional formatting. So to copy it down, we're going to double click on our paintbrush and then click in G4 and hold down with the left mouse and drag it down to G7 and let go. Now click on our paintbrush again to get rid of that formatting. Then if we look at our cells, we can see 12,500 is red because we said anything greater than 12,000 should be red. And everything else is green because we said anything less than 5,000 should be green. And our 10,000 remains black because it's outside of each rule. And save our worksheet. Hiding and unhiding rows and columns. You can hide and unhide rows and columns in your spreadsheet if maybe you have so many columns open that you can't see all of your data, or there's columns that you can hide that don't pertain to what you immediately need to look at, and the same with rows. So let's start with clicking on column G and highlighting G of our event expense worksheet. And then you can either click on Format, Column, Hide, or you can right click and choose Hide, which is the easiest way. So now your column G is gone. You can see A, B, C, D, E, F, H. Now let's hide row 6. So you're going to do the same thing. So if you're going to click on the 6, right click and choose Hide. So now you're 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So if you were to print this data off, nobody would know that you hid row 6 and column G. However, if you were to share this with somebody, they'd obviously be able to tell that those were hiding, and they could then bring them back. So you can also hide multiple rows and columns, and they don't need to be beside each other. They could be rows or columns apart from each other, and you can still hide them. To hide ones that are beside each other, you would just click on the first one, hold down, drag over to the last one, right click, and choose Hide. The same with the rows. You would click on the first one, go up or down to what you want to hide, right click, and choose Hide. Now maybe we want to do columns C and E. They're not near each other, so we'd right click on C, hold down with our Control key on a PC, Command key on a Mac, and then click on column E. So now they're both highlighted. We'd then right click and choose hide. So now our C, E, and G are all gone. We can do the same with the rows. So if we choose row 3, hold down our command key, in row 9, right click, and hide. So now they're all gone. To unhide a column, you highlight your remaining columns and click on Format, Column, Unhide, and it'll unhide every column hidden at once, or you would choose right click, Unhide. So if I wanted to unhide all of these, I'd go to A. I could actually start with B, seeing as we hid C, and all the way over to I or H, where we ended with G. Right click and choose Unhide. And so now I have them all back. If I only wanted to do a particular one, maybe I only want to see C, then I would highlight B and D, right click, and choose Unhide. So only C's come back, E and G are still hidden. Okay, so go ahead and bring back all of your columns and rows. So you're now back to A through H and 1 through 9. And let's say we hide column A. We go ahead and right click on column A, and we're going to hide it. And we want to get column A back. Well, normally we would highlight the column before and after column A, right? Well, there is no column before A. So we can highlight B, drag over to the number column, right click on B, and choose Unhide, and it'll bring column A back for us. Okay, so just a quick trick on how to get column A back. Go ahead and save your workbook. You can also hide an entire worksheet. So let's say we want to hide event expenses. We're going to share this with somebody and we don't want them to know that event expenses is there. You can either right click on the tab and choose hide, or you can go to Format, Sheet, and Hide. So let's go ahead and hide it. And now we're only seeing fall and spring. So if we were to send this to somebody, they would not know, unless they went to Sheet and Unhide, that there was another sheet sitting in here with information in it. So to get it back, you might also want to hide a sheet if you're about to step away from your desk. You don't want anybody to see a sheet you're working on. Rather than closing it all down, you can just hide it. Or again, if you're sending it to somebody and you don't want them to see that that sheet's in there. So to get it back, you can just go to Format, Sheet, Unhide, or right click on one of the open sheets, Unhide. Either way is going to bring up a box and it's going to show you all the hidden sheets that are in here for you to select which one you want to unhide. So we want to unhide event expenses, so we're going to say OK, and it's going to bring it back for us. Go ahead and save your workbook. Okay, to delete and insert rows or columns. So rows or columns can be deleted by clicking on the number or letter of the respective row or column and right-clicking and choosing Delete. You can insert a column or row by clicking on the column row beside or below where you want the column row to go and right-clicking and choosing Insert. So if we want to insert a column between A and B, we're going to click on column B, right-click, and choose Insert. And it's going to put a column between A and B. Now if we wanted to delete a row, we could click on row 8, right-click, and choose Delete. And it's going to delete that row. Well, I happen to want it back, so we're going to undo that and we're going to leave it there. If I wanted to insert a row between 6 and 7, I would choose 7, right-click on it, and choose Insert, and it's going to put a row between 6 and 7. So you do it the row below where you want the row that you're going to insert. So let's undo that. And in column, you do it on the column to the left of where you want the column inserted. You can also insert multiple rows. So if I wanted to insert some rows in here, and I'll just put some in, insert row, insert row. Now if I wanted to insert 3 rows at a time, I could then highlight 10, 9, and 8, insert rows, and it's going to put 3 rows at a time in. I want to undo that though, because I don't want that many in there. Let's get back down to just one. Now if I want to delete a column or a row, again, I would just click on it, right click, and choose delete. If I want to delete multiple, I would choose one, hold down my command on a Mac, control on a PC, choose the next one, down until I get all the ones I want selected, right click, and choose delete. And the same with the column. I would highlight the column, hold down with my command or control, highlight the other columns I want to get rid of, right click, and choose delete. Okay, so we do want column B in there, so let's save our workbook. Okay, so you can do spell checking in Excel just like you would in Word, and the spell check button is found on your review ribbon, and here's AB3 spelling. And if you click on it, it'll ask if you want to continue checking at the beginning of the sheet. You just say yes, it's going to go through, and it's going to tell you, we think you spelt this wrong. You can just say ignore if it's one that's to be ignored, and go through and your spell check is done. You can also merge cells. So if you need to have a cell larger than the one that you currently have and you want to merge them, you can take a combination of 2 or more cells and merge them into one. If you already have data in there, it's going to keep whatever the farthest left data is, and it'll get rid of all the rest. So we're going to merge cells A3 and B3. To do that, we're going to highlight both A3 and B3. And we can do this 2 ways. We can right click, or control click if you're on a Mac, format cells, alignment, and merge cells. Or we can go to our home ribbon, go to merge, choose the drop down, and choose merge cells. So now if you notice, when I look at A3, B3, there's no longer a line between them, and it's now one cell. So I have one cell here. I want to copy that formatting down. So I can copy that formatting down without having to go through all these steps again by double-clicking on my paintbrush. And I want to do it for A4 all the way down to A9 and combine them with B's. So if I just come over here, select all of them, click off my format painter to get rid of it, and then look at them, it's merged them all the way down so that each line is one cell rather than 2. And save your workbook. And that is the lesson for today. Thank you.